What is the most brutal insult you have ever received given? This guy killed me on Rust and told me to put my kid to bed. He could hear her in the background, it was like 11 on a school night. He ganked me and then critiqued my parenting. Musician here. After fucking up a solo, the other guy said that was an interesting choice. Mine was subtle. I went to the doctor because of my leg problem. He weighed me and said my BMI is too high and that I'm classed as slightly obese. I said isn't BMI supposed to be inaccurate because it doesn't account for muscle mass? Sorta tongue in cheek. Doctor looked at me and calmly said not in this case. That hurt man, that hurt. I got into a road rage argument with a guy and he called me a Mumford and Son looking bastard. I must point out that I was neither wearing a waistcoat or playing a banjo at the time. I did have a beard though. Co-worker's kid was hanging around the job eating cookies. His dad tells him to offer cookies to others, points at me and says he likes cookies too. The kid looks at his dad, then at me, and back at his dad and says he looks like he likes cookies. I was devastated. I was talking to my mother-in-law when my wife's sister came in and exclaimed that my wife had just barked at her. Without thinking I said maybe she was just talking to you in a language you'd understand. Luckily my mother-in-law burst out laughing. Some kid was picking on me throughout high school and one day he talked shit about me being adopted. IDK what came over me but my response was, a couple of very nice people paid money to raise me and your parents are probably regretting having you for free. My mom never treated my kids very well. Not bad, but she wasn't really very loving towards them. Mom and I were talking about my oldest, who was 18 at the time, and had been dating the same guy for a few years. Mom says, so what's going on with daughter and boyfriend? Are they going to get married? I say, I don't know. I mean, it's possible. Mom says, I just don't know that I'm ready to be a great grandmother. Well, you could always try being a good one, first. When my nephew was 5, he said he could tie his shoes and tell time. I told him that I couldn't do either of those things at that age, and he looked me in the eye and said, you must have been a pretty dumb kid. Standing in a queue with friends. A child of around 6 or 7 was staring at me hard. It went on for a while. I finally give the kid a nod and say hi. Kid doesn't break eye contact and says nice face, ugly. As a little boy age close to 3, going to hospital with my mother pregnant for twins. In the waiting room there was older men with big belly. I asked my mom loud if that man is also getting twins. She said she was never more ashamed in her life. Someone told me I look like I drop common loot when defeated. While discussing divorce my ex-wife suggested we have a child to fix things. I told her having a child with her would be the equivalent of littering. So I used to wet the bed. Because of this I wore protection. I also used to be a mean older sister. Not too bad, just typical teenager. My little sister and I were eating breakfast. I was making fun of her for being a baby, she was 4. She looks at me and says I'm not the one wearing diapers, baby. My mom choked on her food, it was so brutal. If an atheist saw your face, they'd start praying on the spot. Safe to say I have never recovered. I'm not a goat or your sister, so get your hands off me. A very intelligent and well-read friend of mine once told me I was her favorite non-intellectual friend. I understand what she meant by it. I prefer sci-fi over non-fiction, love comic movies. That was 12 years ago and still bothers me to this day. Years ago, I used to work with an older woman who out of nowhere said she should get her military husband to set me up because he had a lot of single reports. Then she paused and said maybe not, they're too picky. Inside, I was like WTF. At the time, I was way too shy and lacked confidence and self-esteem, so I didn't say anything. To this day, I regret not telling her off even though I really don't think she was intentionally being offensive. Shut up, you off-brand ginger, taken from a friend in a purely playful argument. I've been told I look like I would be red-haired but happen to have light brown instead, so it hit a little hard. My grandmother told her son's wife once that she was more useless than a nun's cunt. A guy I worked with had multiple DWIs. He could not get the blender to work and got so pissed I thought he was going psycho. I told him to look on the back of it to find the hose to blow in to get it going. I was like 10 and chubby. At the beach an uncle told me I looked like a sow who was about to give birth. My 4-year-old during breakfast looked at me and called me a punchline. He doesn't know what that means, but man does it still sting. I'd rather be forced to guide my father into my mother than spend 3 more seconds talking to you. Pert near made me choke on my sandwich the next booth over. My mom passed away in spring of 2015. Was playing Cards Against Humanity with some friends a couple months later. I can't remember the question, it was something about me. I was reading the answers and someone played dead parents. His GF was pissed. My wife wasn't happy. Everyone else was like the what the fuck? I couldn't be mad at all though, that's the spirit of the game. I gave him all 3 points. A dude tried to start a fight with me at a bar and I called him a silver medalist of his own life. Dude was flabbergasted. Received. At least I didn't have to go through 30 families to find one who loved me, only to make them hate me in a few years. Loudly crying face. I was in the foster care system for most of my childhood. A family adopted me at 8, then gave me back to the state at 14, grimacing face. I was playing a foosball game and some friends were looking on. One of them tells me, I hope you lose. Without thinking, because I was focused, I replied, I hope the rest of your life is as mediocre as it has been. One of the other friends almost fell over laughing. I have stage 4 cancer. My aunt is super ignorant and hateful. She went on a racist tirade and I told her, goddamn, you make me wish my cancer would hurry the fuck up. My dad did a career day one time when I was in high school. He's a pretty great guy who runs his own company and clearly made a good impression on my classmates. So much so that at the end of the day, a guy I hated said, you medium placed, your dad is so cool, how are you his son? You were birthed from your mother's ass because her pussy was too busy. When I was in the Marines, I had this staff sergeant who was a literal racist bigot. He even had white by the grace of God tattooed around his collarbone. He didn't like Asians either, and I'm Filipino, not as many in the Marines compared to Navy, so I was the only Asian in my platoon. First thing he ever said to me, what all you are to me is a slanty-eyed weak dick dog eater. And for 5 months, none of my instructors knew my actual name. 5 months of people calling me dog eater instead of my name. Received. I'm not saying you're easily had, but when you die they'll bury you in a Y-shaped coffin. A younger guy said, watch out, old man. That hurt. I'm not old, I'm barely 40. Quite harmless in comparison, I know. You are still a junkie, you just traded the needle for dick. Ran to the store because we ran out of cat food. Just grabbed the bag and after checking out the cashier said, enjoy. How bad did she think things were going for me? In high school a buddy of mine was making fun of another guy's heritage and the other guy responded on a dime, well, what are you? A Polish Palestinian? Too stupid to find your own homeland? The boomer father of a friend, this appliance must be a woman, because whatever you do with it, it still never leads to a satisfying result. Meow, so you have never been able to satisfy a woman? Worked better in German, but the burn was all the better, since he has quite the ego. This definitely isn't the most brutal insult, but when we were playing Truth or Dare someone dared me to go home. A girl in McDonald's randomly once told me to get a haircut. I told her I will when she stops having a face like a drop trifle. For context, she was wearing a lot of